Hello everyone, reporting today for Fun Robotics Network. I'm Abhas, and with me here is Team 13072, Fellowship of the Robot. They have been absolutely fantastic this DECODE season, a very unique robot with a double sorting shooter, very wide rubber band intake, and a level 2 park. Just absolutely incredible. I can't wait to jump into it on Behind the Bot.
This video on fun is brought to you by viewers like you and also in partnership with the following. AndyMark is your one-stop shop for all your robotics competition needs. Celebrating 20 years of quality robotics parts and superior service, AndyMark employees have over 200 years of first-team experience. From mechanical and electrical products to tools and hardware, head on over to andymark.com for high-quality and affordable solutions. FRCTs has been trusted by over 200 first teams to save on custom shirts and team apparel. Founded by first alumni and offering a free 14-day turnaround with faster options available, your team can apply for a sponsorship and get a quote when you scan the QR code or go to frcts.com.
So guys, first question has to be just the overall robot architecture. You know, every year you build super fast robots. Why go for that double shooter design this season?
Yeah, so in our initial strategy, we decided we wanted to keep the ability to have sorting, but we still wanted to have rapid fire. And so we wanted to go with a system that allows us to fire 2 balls at once from each area and then sort the third one into the other system, and allows us to get a back-to-back shot swiftly.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. We'll start with the intake and then spend a ton of time on the shooter. So with the rubber band intake, we've covered a lot of them this season. What do you think were like the biggest things that made sure your guys' was super consistent?
So with this intake, instead of going with rubber bands, we went with 4 surgical tubing that are 7.5 millimeters long and stretched out. This allows the balls to go under effectively, and then when it's spinning, it gives the intake a good amount of stretch, which allows you just to pull it all into the system and keeps us having a simple intake system.
So talking about from a CAD perspective and thinking about compression, did you guys have to test a lot of different compressions with that surgical tubing, and what did you settle on at the end of the day?
I believe the main thing we tested was different stretch lengths of the surgical tubing. We started around 8.5 inches, which has a wider spread because it's not stretched as thin, but has less force. And we also tested out having more, like 2 of them stretched out and 2 of them less stretched out. Ultimately, we decided on the 7.5 to give us the force to push it into the robot up over the ramp.
And so you're saying the surgical tubing itself is stretched out 7.5 inches from its nominal length, or what do you mean by that?
It starts out at 7.5 and it's stretched out to the other full length. Okay.
So your intake as a whole, you're saying is 7.5 inches wide, or
it's stretched out 11 inches.
Okay, I see. So it's about 4 or 5 inches of total stretch there. Awesome. So also talking about motors a little bit while we're here, I see very clearly the bevel geared motor you have going on for your intake. What is the vertical motor that's facing downwards on the opposite side of the intake for?
Yes, that vertical motor is for the lift system.
Okay.
And it's powering both of them with pulleys.
Awesome. Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But now going into your sorting mechanism, I see you guys have some paddles here going on. Walk me through exactly what there is.
All right. So for our sorting system, we have 2 different paddles at the bottom for firing the balls, but they work in tandem with these 2 sorting paddles that can push either side. So we'll intake a ball, bring all 3 balls in, and then whenever the first ball shoots, it'll leave, and then the paddle will push it directly down in, and it drops down in within like half a second, which allows us to keep a rapid fire shooter.
Wow, yeah, that's super clever. Talking from a software perspective, is it sensorized at all, or is it entirely manual at this point in the season?
Yes. We have 2 color sensors with a lamp light above them. It allows us the light will reflect on the green, absorb on the green, or reflect on the purple, which gives a very clear color difference between the 2 of them. So we know the first 2 balls, and then we just basically assume we have the third one, because we decided this because the artifacts are so big, we can kind of visually pick up which ones we want.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So you specifically set that orange, color because of that. And did you do a lot of testing to get there, or was it just kind of like the first shade of orange you decided on worked well for you guys?
There's testing involved. Yeah, it was a little bit, but we got there pretty quickly.
Awesome. Yeah, and did you have this lamp? I mean, I haven't seen this from any team this season. Did you have this from the beginning, or did you notice that you were like shooting through the holes in the artifacts? How did that come up?
Yeah, what you say? Yeah, we had it from the beginning. From the start of the year, we just knew we wanted to have a clear way to keep the balls, the colors different. We've had issues before in the past years.
Wow, yeah, that's really clever. Now, going on to the artifact path, going out of the shooter, walk me through that first, and then we'll talk all about those flywheels and everything you have going on there.
Yeah, so when the artifacts go in the robot, we get 3 at a time. Each one then slots into the system, and it forms a little triangle in the middle, and that gets ready to shoot and be pushed up by the 2 paddles underneath it.
And I see you guys have some counter rollers going on those, like the actual hoods or the back part of that shooter. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this is more from an old design we had, where we had 4 counter rollers up the whole system to put a little more compression in different areas. It was mainly intended to drop the backspin a little bit by slowing it down. Yeah.
Okay, but at this point, you guys just don't think you need that, or you're okay with the backspin?
Yeah, we don't really need them.
Okay. I see. Yeah, and now talking about those flywheels, you have these 2 massive brass flywheels on the robot, two or 3. At what point in the season did you add those, and what improvement did you see with them?
Yeah, so from the start of the season, we knew we were going to need the flywheels to keep the energy up for shooting. So we started the season off with 4 flywheels, actually, 2 on each side. After leaving 1, we decided that the 4 wasn't necessary because it was making a really long wind-up time. So we've changed that down to 3, and they are 3 1-pound brass flywheels from Sencut Sim.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. And when ordering those custom wheels, like, can you give us a ballpark estimate if a team is also interested in purchasing something similar?
Yeah, I believe they're about 50 each for each one.
Awesome. And how are your motors powering your flywheels? Is it 1 motor for each wheel, or is the entire axle powered by 2 motors?
Yeah, so we have 1 axle that goes to both of them, and we have 2 motors powering the whole system. We have 2 1-to-1 motors underneath with the bevel gear system, right angle, driving it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, my concern with that would be like the RPM dropping too much when you're trying to launch 2 artifacts at the same time. Was this not something you observed, or was it just those brass flywheels helped so much there?
Yeah, no, since the beginning, the brass flywheels have done a great job. In fact, when we had 4, basically we had to turn down the RPM because it was going so much.
Wow.
And because the gears have like 0 friction on them, you could just spin it and keep going. We don't have any friction issue, and so the 3 brass flywheels do the job for us.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, talking a little bit about RPMs and maintaining those, are you keeping the shooter on the entire Teleop, or do you turn it on and off between cycles?
Yeah, so we keep ours on the entire Teleop. And actually, because of the 0 friction, we get a little bit of boost when we start Teleop because it's still spinning from auto. It continues to spin the entire time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's clever. And as far as RPMs go, around how fast are you spinning when you're shooting from that far launch zone? Because one thing I see is you guys launch from the far launch zone incredibly well. So, clearly the distance is not an issue.
Yeah, we shoot somewhere between 2,000. It's 2,000 to 2,100 ticks per second. I forget the exact RPM.
Yeah, that's okay. Our viewers can do the conversion. But that's good to know. Yeah, that makes sense. And as far as adjusting velocities, do you guys do close launch zone shots at all, or do you just stick to the back of the field?
So we do both. We do from the back of the field and the front of the field by adjusting the flywheel speed.
Okay, and I don't see any adjustable hood there, so that wasn't something you guys needed at this point in the season?
No, we opted not to go with an adjustable hood. We kind of have a hood angle that's in between 50 degrees, the horizontal plane, which allows us to have good backfield shots and close.
Okay, and I see you guys have these like kind of skid plates, I'll call them, that are on top of your wheels. Have those been there the entire time? What do they do, and when did you add them?
No, so these are recently added from a chain effect of adding our light bars and a full system for that. We added them to stop the balls from bouncing off the cover we have on the top, because when they were like kind of hooking out and then hitting it, and it was causing them to just fire straight upwards.
I see. Okay, so more of a recent addition. And
Yes.
as far as the limelight goes on the front of your robot, how are you using that?
Yeah, so we use Limelight and Auto and Teleop. We use it to target on the system on the April tag by measuring like the size of the April tag the robot sees.
Got it. And as far as angulation goes, is that entirely based off the pinpoint, or are you also using the position of the April tag for angulation?
We're also using the position of the April tag.
Okay, and as far as like turning in Teleop, is that just completely driver automated? Is that completely like automated, or also like your drivers are doing it? Is it just like kind of one button press to turn to the angle?
Yeah, so for Teleop, the aiming, we have one button that we hold down. It'll lock on the target, and then whenever the RPM and the whenever it's on target and the RPM both match our regression curve, then it'll fire.
And around, can you give us a ballpark of like what accuracy you require from the limelight? You know, do you have to be like within 1 degree, within 5 degrees, or does that change based on where you are on the field?
It changes. I'm not sure the exact answer for that. Our programmers are not here.
Yeah, that's completely fine. Talking a little bit about the light bars, last question before we get into the park. Are you using those for driver information, or are they more just aesthetics at this point of the season?
They're more aesthetics at this point.
Okay, got it. Yeah, but totally lots of future capabilities there. Now let's talk about the park. You guys have a level 2 park. You've had it for a long time. Walk us through the mechanism, and then we'll ask more specifics.
Yeah. So for the park system, if you look under the robots, we have this plate right here with grip tape on it, which prevents us from moving. Because in the first league meet, our teammates were just kind of barely touching us when we were sliding around. And the plate's held down here by 2 Axon minis with latches that can open and close. So we open it once and then just go up.
Okay, I see. And so you have one motor to power the entire slide system. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's that one vertical motor.
Okay, and as far as like torque and RPM requirements go there, what are you really like 60 RPM motor, 110 RPM motor? What is that?
It's a 13.7 to 1 motor.
Okay. Okay.
And the pulley is a 12 millimeter diameter.
I see. Yeah, if we could see a park right now, that would be fantastic. While you guys are setting that up, as far as time to lift goes, what does that look like for you guys? And is that something you're looking to improve?
Yeah, so it takes us about 10 seconds in total to get the full park. We're looking to improve the system potentially with springs to help lift itself up. But it takes a lot to lift this robot up with one motor.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you guys looked into any of the, like power draw or like current draw of this, and like, how much current it is drawing, and if you can optimize it at all, or for now that's not needed because it does work?
We haven't looked into that, no. Not quite
Okay.
yet.
And I see while you're up here, that's just absolutely insane. Robot's not powered right now, so how is it holding itself up?
Yeah, so if you look in here, we have this pole is on a latch that's attached to the motor gear. That when we unlatch it, it can go back down, but it works as like a ratchet strap. So when you go up, that clicking you heard, it's clicking each time it's going around, and then whenever it stops, you just hold it in place.
Okay, so that's like a custom ratchet that you guys have built. Is that true?
Yeah, and then we can just go down here, you pull it. Yeah, you pull it and then go back down.
Very cool. So that's not powered at all. It's just not back drivable. Is that correct?
Zero power. In fact,
Yeah.
we stop the power whenever we get up.
Very cool, very cool. And yeah, as far as compatibility with teammates go, as teams are looking to build these park mechanisms, how high do you guys lift? And is that something you think needs to be changed for the future?
Yeah, we get the full 18 inches, basically. Right, maybe around 17 and a half, about the full 18. Our goal is to try to be as compatible with any team as we can.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Fellowship of the Robot, thank you guys so much. You have just one of the most unique robots in the Decode season, and I think doing an interview so early is going to really influence how other teams develop their robots and the problems they think about when they're integrating such unique mechanisms. So I really appreciate it. Reporting for Fun Robotics Network, I'm Abbas, and this is Team 13072, Fellowship of the Robot. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to stay up to date on future fun videos. FRCTs has been trusted by over 200 First teams to save on custom shirts and team apparel. Founded by First alumni and offering a free 14-day turnaround with faster options available, your team can apply for a sponsorship and get a quote when you scan the QR code or go to frcts.com. AndyMark is your one-stop shop for all your robotics competition needs. Celebrating 20 years of quality robotics parts and superior service, AndyMark employees have over 200 years of first-team experience. From mechanical and electrical products to tools and hardware, head on over to andymark.com for high-quality and affordable solutions.